Previously on Resident Evil 4 Remake, Leon S. Kennedy, armed with questionable aim and Leoric-level decision-making, arrived in a remote Spanish village in search of the president's daughter. What he found instead was a village very keen on murder. After surviving relentless ganados, eerie rituals, and a chainsaw enthusiast with far too much enthusiasm, Leon uncovered the truth of Las Plagas, a parasite turning the villagers into something far worse. His search led him to Ashley Graham, who immediately became both the objective and the escort mission. Together they fought to escape, only to be dragged deeper into the nightmare. A monstrous battle on the lake ended with Del Lago defeated, but the victory was short-lived. Captured and infected, Leon now fights not just for survival, but against the parasite inside him. Now the path forward leads into the looming castle, and whatever waits inside is far from welcoming.
I remember getting blocked one time and joining the rob by an accident.
Lads, what is happening? Steam Train will come on straight in there with the bullets. McKen's, Boydie. McKen's, what is the crack, lads? How was your Saturday? How's your weekend been going so far?
7 minutes.
What's happening?
7 minutes is all I can spare to play with you.
Now, Tomahawk, can you even spare them 7 minutes to play with me? Saying that you forgot your controller. You brought all your streaming equipment, but no controller? What happened there? I've seen your posts about it, and I found them really hilarious. The fact that you put so much effort and planning on it, and then it's just like, oh, I didn't bring my controller. I can't actually play any of this shit.
Hello there.
But what is happening? I had a good old day today. Got up kind of early, got some stuff done, and then went to the bowling alley, met my buddy that was back from San Diego, and a few of the old D&D guys showed up as well. I could have cried. I would have went out and bought a new controller. I would have bought a new controller for it, man. Just out of sheer, I'm going to hardcore through this. So it's good. Went to wee Teddy's birthday today. Hook was saying to me, he's all, I was going to invite you, but your wains are too old and I don't like you bald bastard. And I was like, well, that's all accurate things to say, so, you know, that's fair. But yeah, I went to the bowling alley, played a game of bowls, and I must say, you know, I'm not much of a sport.
Oh, you! Jesus Christ.
It is oddly specific, but you know, he just threw it on there. It's what he said about me. But I'm not much of a sportsman. But I must say, I played quite possibly the worst game of bowls anyone has ever seen. Like, I brought my daughter, and my mate brought his daughter as well, and his wee girl, she's very young, so she had to use the
Tell me what you want.
the bumpers and everything.
Oh, excuse me.
Even she beat me.
Dark, I'm sorry.
No.
I
What do you
don't
say?
have this brains.
No.
I don't even think
No.
the dog is here. She's sitting up.
I'm not gonna give you a treat if you call me that. What do you say?
Really? What is happening? You may not be in the sports, but I'll play with your balls. Ooh, matron. Oh, matron. Oh, matron. Where is the pupper? She is not there. What if I give her a wee treat? Where is the camera? Treat. She will go to your bed because it's her safe place where she has her treats and her num-nums. We could make it a group effort. We could. Now, I'm not meaning to brag, but I've been told by a medical professional that I have a young person's testicles, so that's all I'm saying. May not be good at sports, but, you know, I took that compliment. That's going on my gravestone. In a jar? I do. I keep them in the cupboard. They're pickled. Right beside the pickled onions, and the worry is someday I'm going to mix them up. But that was good idea. That a good idea. Seeing the buddies back. Him and his wife were back from San Diego, no, they moved to Connecticut now. They were in San Diego. Now they moved to Connecticut. And it was good crack. It was good crack. Everyone else was so much better bowling than me. But I am notoriously bad at it. I have zero skill, coordination, or rhythm, and it was abysmal. About the controller debacle, got we short edit and its ties and the Monday's Resident Evil episode. Very good, very nice, Tomahawk. Nice one. Anybody's not following Tomahawk as well, definitely give High Scores High Stakes a follow. You find them as well on Instagram and stuff, and their posts are fucking hilarious. But to go play some more Resident Evil 4 tonight, I think. So when we left off last, we'd got into the castle, made our way through the battlements, defeated a boss. Then we went down, we fought Wolverine, now we're just solving puzzles. Name that game that has no controller. He's wearing respectable. He's wearing respectacle? What? The fuck are you talking about? Flemish, have you been snuffing the hot sauce again? The fuck are you talking about? Glasses. Alright. Respect, inspect. Right, okay. I get what it... shit. No, try better. Try better. Fuck you of all people, dad joke. You're just making a spectacle of yourself now. I seen it. Doom? No, GoldenEye. GoldenEye's the game. I realize that there is no audio on this because I turned down the master audio because it's a game that likes to have the audio in the background at all times. Damn, you got it. Well done. We're all doomed. I started playing as well, and it's Ian's fault as well. I started playing Final Fantasy 12 earlier on today as well and got really into it. I forget what I was doing. I have no ammo for that. I have ammo for that. I have some ammo for that. Right, okay. We're okay. 12 is good. I love 12. I'm enjoying it. I don't think... See, I'm taking my time with it, so I don't think it would be a game I would ever stream. But it's good. It's very good. And I think I got it at launch, and I never gave it the proper time. But now I can enjoy it a bit more. Right, so I had just come straight down here to shave. But I didn't go... Oh, what's happening here? Do I have to shoot these? Apparently so. I wanna swing from the chandelier.
Me? As if.
What are you? Golden hourglass. You're an hourglass?
Leon, are you kidding me?
From the chandel that's here. Yes.
Seriously, who does that?
I like it. I like it.
What are you, my mother?
But what was the weather doing today? What are you, my mother? The weather didn't know what the fuck was happening. It was either incredibly sunny or hailstones. There was like little pockets of snow about the place, and I thought, what the fuck is going on? Oh, I didn't get that thing. Ooh, this man. Right. Also, I don't have to shoot it. Okay. I'd have to do these in a certain order then. Is there something in my notes that's gonna tell me? No. No. 7 minutes. We did. It was mental. It was mental. All the different weather shenanigans. That one is still lit though. I do realize that I forgot a thing over here. I don't think them chandeliers are built for that. Also, what is the normal procedure for getting around up here? It can't be that. That's just fucking mental. Right, that has done something. Is it one still... Where was the other one? No, this one is now not lit. Right, okay. Like, they like two of them to get a door open. Like, what are you? You are... like a water thing and a snake. This is water thing. Oh, you just went straight out. Water thing, and then the snake was on the other side, wasn't it? The boy helped install them. He must have. Do you ever watch the making of, or not even the making of, it's just them two talking about that whole scene. And they said, listen, it costs so much to get the chandelier done. That's the very last episode of the season. If you don't laugh, whatever you do, don't laugh. If you laugh, not only are you fired, we're all fired. We can't sell a season to the BBC because they won't take only a few episodes. Do not laugh under any circumstance. And he said he was just watching, and they did it perfectly. The chandelier beside them fell, and he just stood, and him and Jason just stared at each other. And then he looked over at the director, and he took out a handkerchief, and he just slowly shoved it in his mouth, and he could just see his shoulders going like this, and that's when they knew. Anyway, went my hole, walking the dog at 6 a.m. And when at the dump, it was nice and warm. Yeah, the weather was mental. Like, it had no idea what it was doing. Me and you were chatting about it in, was it Burton's chat earlier?
Salutations, Mr. Kennedy.
And
You ready to hand over the girl?
nobody can get no gardening done.
This guy again.
Not this guy again. Can I break that?
Entertainment for you.
Watch Only Fools and Horses. All of it? Yes. I think they should have ended it whenever
Do it,
they...
lady.
Sierra, what is happening? They should have ended it whenever they won the lotto. Or not the lotto, whenever they became millionaires. There was no need for them to continue after that. The episode with the chandelier, or the one where he falls through the bar. Or anything we trigger. Alright, Dave. We'll leave that for a second, but we locked everything else. Ooh, a little room. Oh, we savor. There's some parasites at the body controller hosts. Stalks, parasite worms, fish with yellowtail. Right, okay. No more episodes after Lotto 1. I agree. That's whenever it just should have ended. Right. I'm going to have to go exploring the rest of this. Can I open this door now? Is this going to open up to the front section? Is that what this is? Yes, that's exactly what it is. Cool beans. No, I opened that door. Ashley, did you close that door behind me? Because if you did, I'm not speaking to you. Oh, is this how I heard him? Right, okay. Otherwise it made no sense. He was just talking on this cup. Bum 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 bum. That's locked. Won't open, Leon. Leon! Bum 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 bum. Well, this seems normal. This is fine. Who's this guy? Holy mother of God. I am low on ammunition. Although I don't get green herb, which is always good. I can mix that with the red herb. But there's that many good, like, old British TV shows. No, I need something for there. I need a crank!
They're here.
Oh, who's here?
Ah, the entertainment.
Who are we talking about? Sir?
Present for you. Move! Next.
Watch out!
Actually, I will use you as a human shield. Oh, he's just jumping down. Right, okay. Fine. Lad. I am just going to run around you. Because fuck that shit. Oh, I can just shoot you. Right, okay.
Leon, watch out!
I want to break free.
Watch out!
Shit. Hey, Bearish, what's happening? You mean the egg timer? What are we talking about? Are you talking about only fools and horses?
You okay?
Yeah.
That's what we were chatting about earlier, the fact they should have ended it after the one, when they became millionaires. That's the one. That's right, they were using it as an egg timer, wasn't it? But it was some, like, fancy clock or watch. I can hear him, boys chatting. But they will hold out until I get my ammo. Ammo. Crap. Can we do shotgun? No. No shotgun yet. Sit in the garage for years. But that's the way. How many stories did you hear about that? Somebody sitting with a first edition Superman comic and stuff. Thinking, oh, that's just a stupid comic. Just a comic book. I don't think I have anything rare or important.
Jesus, it's got teeth.
Will you stop looking at him? Lady? Reminded me of, speaking of comics, I meant to read The Last Ronin. Is that the Turtles one? Right, you know what? We're just wasting ammo doing this. The Red 9 will take care of these motherfuckers. Actually, you know what? You know what? Let us be a wee bit more sensible about it. That's much better. Lads. Yeah, the Turtles one. Nice one. I did see that. I was in the comic book shop on Friday, and I did see that, and I thought, ooh.
Are you okay?
But instead, free rein. Now, I've seen the first season of the anime, and it's phenomenal, and I just want to start reading them too now. I do love physically reading something, you know, having something physical to read. I know you can read them digitally and stuff, but I don't know, there's something about having a physical book there, which is like that physical book. That is a physical book right there. There's something about it that's just a wee bit. I like it. Don't know what that noise was. In my hands. Shut up, Ready Crash. I'd love to get a read of it. Must be a good app or something. See if I can get it in your Kindle. Yeah, see, the Kindle's another grand. I was going to get one. I don't have a Kindle. I was going to get one not that long ago, and then I just thought, I don't know. Will I even use it? Or if I sit down with a book as well, it feels more tangible. I'm talking about. Go reload here. Ready nose. Hold on. Yeah. The halo wheel, hook a bit over it. Maybe I'll. Hey.
Watch out!
Watch out with what? Oh, where them guys? Look at them, lads! All the boys.
You're serious. Come on.
Shit.
Ashley.
Oh, I lost the head there. Something that's very light here is just shotgun ammo. Where are you going to start me from? Good. Garlados.
One down.
I hadn't created the flashbang yet. Completely unfazed by that jump scare. Oh no, I'm just more worried about what's actually happening here. And they all died. Do-do-do. Face Bluger. So how good we day today? I plan to do very little tomorrow. Tomorrow shall be a day of lazing about. So I took my daughter with me when I went out to meet the buddies, and she also whipped my ass at bowling. And then took her out to Pike and Palms, then got burgers and chips. I got tacos, brisket tacos. They were beautiful, but I was a fucking mess. My beard was fucking covered in taco juice. But was a good time.
Watch out!
You watch it? Oh, we're getting close. He's a one-man army.
Not bad, right?
You make sure you stop him in the head there, Leon. You get that boy down. Get him down. I'm also starting to run low on health. I could eat this snake. Oh, I do have health here. I'll eat the snake anyway. This is snake. Oh, who fucking shot me? Why even aim, Leon, if you don't have the ammo for it? Eh? Oh, I don't like that noise.
All right.
There he is. How did the wee man get on today, Hook? And I'm not talking about you. How did the Teddy, big 3-year-old on his birthday, get on? Shut it, you. I would worry because Hook is a mod and he'll get you. Fucking get you, Flim Flam.
Holy.
Had a brilliant day. Amazing. Mackenzie's in bragging of the fact that he got invited and I didn't because my kids are too old.
No sweat.
And boring and shit. And those were your exact words. They are. Your kids are too old, boring, and shit. I don't take it. Oh, Banhammer's coming. Go, parents, go. My kid could beat up your kid. Actually, to be fair, I think my eldest kid could actually beat up all of us. Like, he could probably kick the shit out of all of us. I don't even think it's my kid could beat up your kid. He could just batter us all. We're knackered. McKinn's got invited because he is a big child. Shade for McKinn's. Why is that not phasing me tonight? Chrissy, welcome on. Maybe it's just not loud enough. Maybe I need to turn the game volume down for myself and turn that up. Maybe that's what the problem is. Yeah, the jump scares are really not getting me at all tonight. I don't know why. Hello, Chrissy. What is happening? Did you get invited to this birthday party that I never got invited to? I found that it's a phase of me that I started adding other sounds to them, make it random, like blah, 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 blah. You got invited? Oh, the fuck. You son of a bitch. So I can do handgun or shotgun. We go shotgun. I think I need shotgun shells. PS5 beep. Whoa. It's real, isn't it? What are you doing? Nothing. Not playing PS5. Definitely not. It happened once. Or the dog scared you that one time as well. That is a fun noise. What is with all the black goo? And where is it stored? I mean, it's not even leaking. Stars. My dog has scared you many times. Oh no. My dog has scared me in the middle of the night quite a bit. Where she just starts roaming about the house.
A little over the top, don't you think?
A little over the top, don't you think?
No problem.
Leon! Also, Burton has taken to what you do, which is barking at my dog through the stream. Yes!
You gonna be okay?
I'm a trendsetter.
Yeah, I got this.
Does Ashley got it?
I'll cover you. Don't stop.
All right. Keep on rolling. You know what time it is.
Now that one.
Be careful.
Oh, shit. Where'd you come out of? Hey, kid. Would you stop moving?
Hang on. I've got you.
Oh, shit. You can keep moving.
One down.
Leon! Correct me if I'm wrong, did you say Resi 2's top 10 of all? Yeah, Resi 2 Remake. I would put that in my top 10. It's one of those ones as well. I keep going back to it and playing more of it. Like, I've started another Leon run now just because I'm really enjoying it. I know, I hear you.
Shit. Ashley.
Ashley! Can't even see that boy. Ready. Yep, you must be. I would also be raging. What are you raging about? What are we raging? Big praise, big praise. It is very, very good, very good. Never. I hope you kept me some cake. Did Hook bring us all some cake? I want cake. Wasn't even bothered about seeing Hook and Teddy. Was looking for. You were the one who was looking for a seat. Yes. I think I should have gave you some left. But loads left. Are we all getting cake, Hook? I would also like cake.
Okay.
Well done, kid.
Here.
Let's go. Well, I think, you know, I don't really think there's too much variation of cake. There's just cake flavored stuff, and then you have chocolate and different types of icing on top of it. Or unless it's ice cream cake. Raspberry and white chocolate cake, pure beauty. Ooh, nice. It is wasted on the children. My God. Although we went to Pike and Palms today, so, you know, that was fucking incredible. I got tacos.
Thanks.
Brisket tacos. Oh, this is nice. Hello, stranger. What's your boy? Just go do some reloads. Watch them here. Well done, Leon. Good man. That's a good combo. I was the same. I felt like going home when I seen you weren't there. Where did you go for the party? See if it was the bowling alley. I was fucking there. It was closed. Pike and Palms. I mean, no, the restaurant's closed, but the bus by the quay is still open. You meet up your friend? Yeah. We did some bowling. I was fucking. It's horrendous. I was. Cake and tea party. Hooks for a cake and tea party tomorrow. Everybody's invited. Alright, I've got to send you then. Come on. We love the party. Alright. Where is that the one just up from you? I mean, the docs you too much, like, but that's the one beside our old gym, wasn't it? Everyone's just writing that they love the party. Feels like there's more to this room that means CI.
Hey.
Before time began. That's the place shed. We love the parties near Lidl. Oh, I know where you're on about now. Yes. Very good. I remember there was one as well down beside the border that did,
Looks like the right place. You okay?
I think so.
did all the big VR stuff and stuff. It was cool. My wee boy used to go, well, the last couple of times he had a birthday party he went to.
Worrying about her. Worry about your own skin.
Oh, shit.
Little lamb.
You cut me with my own knife. You made me bleed my own blood.
Temperance, child.
Ashley. Wait!
What about tomorrow night? Hook, are you back playing Dark Souls as well? Is there much left in your Dark Souls 2 playthrough as well? Chapter end. Bum 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 bum.
Roos, come in. Things went to shit. We took refuge inside a castle, but I've just been separated from Baby Eagle.
Saying you.
Roos, you're breaking up. Do you read me?
For one? In.
It's a fish.
Chopper.
Damn it. So much for that.
But I still have my knife, so I think it's bullshit. Kick his ass, sea bass. It's a big old bass. Do I? I don't really love the party anymore. It's more, I would rather just sit down and have a wee cup of tea. Is that a place we can go? Can we go somewhere and just sit and have tea? Although I had to go on a big banning thing on TikTok earlier as well. My little girl is getting quite badly bullied at school by the bitches, by other people in her class. And they found out that I stream, and they have been going on to my TikTok and liking it, and then giving her grief about the stupid stuff I say on it. And I feel bad.
Welcome. I got something new for you.
Oh, the Matilda.
What's that? How have we procured these curiosities?
I know they're fuckers. Way more. I'm too old. Back in the day, I did. I don't even think I really did back in the day, to be fair. I don't want the body armor yet.
Wares are in tip-top shape.
Ooh.
I assure you.
Need addresses and names. Fuck, if I knew that, buddy. If I knew that, I would probably still not do anything with them, like, but, it annoys me. It annoys me that the fact that me going on and having a bit of crack and playing games and stuff is being used against her, and that pisses me off.
Well-tuned weapon can make up for a lack of skill, friend. See how that...
I'm sorry, lack of skill?
like yourself should notice the difference right away.
Golden hourglass.
Ruby's all
Perfume bottle.
rubbish. A deal well struck.
Tell you what, I have a boy and I have a girl, and it's so much more difficult having a daughter, because boys, they just fight each other and that's it. It's over and done with. Rebecca, yeah. But even then, I suppose girls were bitches back then too. But
Try that on for size.
before I level up my knife. But it's more that they get you on social media and stuff now.
Your specific need
They're just so fucking nasty, and it's annoying.
of beauty, isn't it?
Yeah. We'll go for a rate of fire on this.
Pleasant trip.
We'll sort this out, and then I will... Should I sell the fish? We get more rifle ammo. Let's just bolts in the rest of it. I think I'll keep the fish and then eat the fish. Step out of line. A couple set you right. Well, I don't think you're allowed to do that anymore, but yeah. Makes you wonder what their parents like, or their children doing that. I know. But I think a lot of the problem as well, like say if someone came to my door and said my kid had done something, you immediately wouldn't be giving off to your kid, but at the same time you wouldn't automatically assume they're innocent either. Because you don't know what Egypt stuff they get up there when they're with their mates. But why not parents these days are just very much, my fucking Shaniqua would never do that. And you're just like, I'm sorry, but no. It is. You'd want all the facts, yeah. You wouldn't immediately condemn them, but you wouldn't assume they're innocent either. Oh. You guys good? You all good? Everybody good?
This is messed up.
This is messed up, Leon. Right, there's a wee door down there. There's looks to be something up this way too. Like this way seems to loop kind of around. Oh wait, is that the way which way am I supposed to be going? Right, this is the way I'm going to explore. This is the way I'm going to explore. Shaniqua Doherty McLaughlin. I know, kids go. I'm convinced parents these days are so hands off, because generally before would have got a club. I think it's more there's too many parents that want to be their kid's friend rather than being their parent. And I think that's the problem. And yeah, obviously you have to have fun stuff with your kids, but you also have to be the one that they have to respect, and you have to come down on them like a ton of bricks whenever they step out of line. But that doesn't happen anymore now. It's just, let's all be soy sausages. I'd have to jump down from up there then. That was my way, so you would whip their asses. You would. Obviously not all parents, so just ones with shit kids. I think it's... You have to be very, very careful who they pal about with. It's their friends, I think, are the main influence. Well, I need to find a torch to open up that. And I somehow get the impression that there's going to be another one of these fuckers. A big Wolverine sumbitch. And also to you. Push it to the limit. Limit. Always, always.
Don't mind me.
La 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 la.
Jesus, my head. Not bad, right?
Oh, you still going? He is still going? Fuck!
No food for you.
No food for you! Oh fuck, I heard you.
Where are the turtles?
Where are the turtles?
They?
Fuck away off, would you? This is when shit gets real now. Explosions. Sir.
What the hell is happening?
I don't know, Leon. I don't know. Uncle Flance, what's happening? There's a, yeah, you want to look line. We want to be parents first, friends second, 100%. I think a lot of people just became parents, but they weren't really mature enough for it yet. Right, where's Ariana Grande here? Fuck. I eat my fish. Let's go on.
Jesus, my head.
At least your man's down now. Right, we're gonna sit here and we're gonna be cool. I said be cool. What's happening? I'm real good, bro. How are you? Flange, what's happening? When did, I'll start with Liara. P6. Glad you came back. It's fleeting. I'm away again tomorrow. You way back to Poland? Journey back was mental, bastards. Get the gate closed and then... Oh my god. Traveling is a nightmare at the moment, man. I don't envy. Lad, don't go up there. I can hear a fucker. I can hear a fucker. Never bullied at school. I got grief now and again, but give us... Yeah, you got grief as well, and you... Normally it's your mates giving you the most grief, but you know that they back you up no matter what. But no, the bullying's fierce, especially with wee girls. My wee boy was bullied for a wee bit as well when he was in primary school. But wee boys, they just fight it out, and that's it then, it's sorted. But girls, my god, they're so harsh. My mates weren't mates. Were your mates nice to you? Just bullies, I was a punching bag, but I was too stupid to see it. Oh, no way. Extra passport check in here, took me ages though. No. See, we all give each other grief, but it's all silly stuff, like it's all shippy. Sorry, I am too busy trying to think here. Yeah, it's never actual criticism. I think that's where the line's drawn, whenever it comes really mean-spirited and personal. Right, I think I got everything. Right, now back up to there. Spotty dog. Yeah, like call me Janice Battersby. It was a bit of crack. It was funny. I was wearing a silly wig. But yeah, I know these wee girls are brutal there, and they don't. I don't think they realize that they're the bad guys in it. They watch things like Mean Girls, and they side with the good people in the TV show, but they don't actually realize that they are the dickheads. It's almost like our culture, joke and jab, taking the piss. It is, but it's knowing who you're doing it. Look, who was I was chatting the other day about it? It might have been on stream, but I was saying, you say I give Hook a bit of grief, and Hook gives me a grief, and there's a bit of banter. See if, that's grand, but see if someone external came in and was mean, you'd be like, who the fuck are you? What are you doing? What are you giving him grief for? It's almost, you see, a bit of banter and jokes is all good, but when you look back and realize it's all directed at one person, that's the downside. That's the downside. And like you say as well, you have to be able to give and take grief. Akira, what's happening? How's RE4 today? Doing well. There's a lot of violence happening, a lot of violence. I was at a certain point when I whipped their ass and got suspended, whereas they didn't. What's this? Look, what'd you do? I was at certain points when I whipped their ass and got suspended, whereas I didn't. In Alton Towers? Prime example, left me alone after that. What happened? Well, you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. What are you on about? Is this a family feud game? No, we're talking about bullying, about people, the difference between a bit of banter between buddies and people being horrible bullies. And Hook just fucking wrecked them. He just wrecked them. I don't actually know the story, so I don't know what happened. So that's a way out. This is a wee tiny room, which I can't get into because Ashley's not here. I meant when you said the game is about bloody. Oh, we just gone in their room and there was a whole there was one of them red guys ready to kill for a lantern, and shit just got real. I don't know what I should do. Should I go back and sell some stuff, or Flamash sent me a Instagram as well about constantly clicking under the menu, and I realize I'm doing it quite a bit just to find which way I'm facing. Ain't skipping me in a queue, fucking 100% Hook. Some bitches trying to take your teapots. And you're an Irishman, so a cup of tea is fucking gospel to you. This is a very empty room. I know this game well, but still open the map constantly. Yeah, because I'm like, which way am I facing? And there's times I look at the map and I was like, I don't think that's me.
You can stop right there.
Ada!
Leon. Wouldn't make me use this. Would you?
Well, after 6 years, that is one hell of a greeting.
So what do you think, Flemish? What's your opinion? Who is he married to? Is it Ada or Claire? I think that Central 2 Remake is the counter at the end for how many times you open the map. Is that really? Oh, that's cool. That's cool. But we're going, we don't need maps.
Time. Better for close encounters.
Not a bad move. Very smooth.
So who are you working for this time?
Oh, Leon.
There's something about it, because
you know I
if
don't work in town.
well, that's true. That's true. We'll be let down no matter what. I think he slapped you on the sunburn your neck and you responded with a Van Damme one.
She's lost no matter
You vote nothing in.
You walk away now.
I have a mate as well, and I work with him, and he comes in here quite a bit as well. BK Ultima. Lovely, lovely fella. You know, and I've never seen him annoyed at anybody. But he's already told me a story about this before, and see, if you hit him in the head, he will fucking flip. I've never done it. I was like, oh, I should do it, and he's all, no. the arc. I will. Fucking etchy.
Then I might get you that greeting you were looking for.
Kept doing it, and I said a few times to stop. Right, so you're in the queue, these guys are winding you up, and you whoop their asses. Fuck, Hook, well played. Well played. We need that security footage.
Right. How about we continue this discussion another time?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Thought I'd run to here.
Leon! Ooh, fancy book. Mine now. My book. I don't know how I feel about it. I do like the fact that the key items don't show up. You know, they don't take up your inventory space. But at the same time, I think that was part of the charm of the older ones, that they did take up your inventory space, so you kind of needed to. Oh, no, I don't have a key for there. I'm gonna play Requiem on my projector. He's gonna play Requiem on my projector. It's gonna be epic. Nice one. Got me mate up from the train station. Does he play much Resident Evil games, Akira? Also, did that give you a shout out earlier? If it didn't, definitely give Akira a follow. We rated on them the other night as well. Cool Bean plays a lot of horror games, Resident Evil, and Final Fantasy games. What are you playing through? Final Fantasy 5, I think, at the moment. I'm hoping it's Chris. That would be a plot twist. But you know what? It could do worse. It would, but we're having beers. Ooh, beers. That sounds nice. Experience with another backtracking. Other than, yeah, I suppose. But, you know, there's something else here. That was another book. It's a book. That was a door opening. Another one. And then there's one already here, right? Okay. No. Right, that one goes there. The sword one goes at the top. Oh, right, okay, we have a few different ones. Right, you go up there then. You go there. Swap you positions with that one. That looks about right. Chris will throw you. Chris can throw you by the rooms. Here's imagine. Fair play. He does. He loves RE, but he can't get Requiem, so he's doing an all-nighter, and we shall say nice one. Once I get moved to these areas, supposed to be opening new areas within a central hub. Yeah, on PS1 and the Gel 3 played RE Sega Saturn today. Nice one. Thank you for sharing. Never expected. Not a problem. Fuck that one. That one did work. That one did work. That one did work. Jesus Christ. Love the OG hardware use. It is pretty cool, isn't it? Right. Is it because... Yes, that one needs to be a square. That's why. And that one is also square. There we go. Got it. It was the shape on the outside I wasn't catching on to.
That should do it.
That one did get me. It was the volume, it was the problem. But the door load times is Saturn and no auto aim of the real bosses today. Inventory management's the real boss.
Need to find Ashley.
Nothing wrong there. Nothing's gonna pop up. Fucker. He's gonna come alive. Red herb. I can mix you with a green herb. Alright, Lurk, enjoy. I'll pop on my chat. Not a problem. Kira, thank you very much for coming on, having a wee chat. Anything else in that room? It's checking the rooms as well to see if there's anything you missed too.
Oh, great.
Well, that's fun. It's three-dimensional where all the shit is too. Burn the body. Throw that body in the fire. Leon, what the fuck are you thinking? What are you thinking, lad? We'll go back and open this. Oh, we've ads. Don't even see them appear. Oh, that's the one from One of Fools and Horses. That's Egg Timer. We're rich. We're rich. I've noticed as well, I haven't been taking many ads in my playthroughs. I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Because I noticed last stream, I've just been battering on and just powering through. And I think it's, I don't know why, I just seem to have a lot more energy when it comes to it. Well, that's good.
Christ.
Well, that didn't go well. It's a little baby Rodney. My favorite line from Whiffle Services, Dale and Raquel have a baby, and Rodney says, what is it? It's the little baby Rodney. And so it's Damien, wasn't it?
Oh, great.
Let me go back and do the sweep up and then make a higher caliber weapon. Like a shot at a gun. I love old TV shows like that. Do anybody's ever watched Frasier? One of my favorite jokes was in Frasier years ago. And, oh, I cried laughing at it. It was... Niles suspected Maris was cheating on him. And... How did it go again? He was speaking to the housekeeper, and the housekeeper only spoke Spanish and German. And Fraser needed to translate into German to English. And then Niles got annoyed about it, and he pulled out a sword, and he shouted, "On guard," and Fraser's all, "Really, Niles, really? That's what you think this situation needs? Another language?" Fucking loved Fraser. Such a good show. Not even a joke, but the bit where your bone goes off in Fraser's apartment, it's just, he runs and goes, "What the hell was that?" It's one of them. It's a weird one as well because it was a spin-off show. It was a spin-off show which I actually enjoyed more than the actual show it was based on. I enjoyed, although Cheers was quite good, but I enjoyed Frasier more. Cheers was also, yeah, it was also fantastic.
Oh, break's over, I suppose.
Oh, there he is.
Welcome.
I think
what can I interest you?
the weird one I've now seen is that is it Georgie and Mandy one, where it's a spin-off of a spin-off of a spin-off. So you had Big Bang Theory, then Young Sheldon, and now this is another spin-off of that, which is mental.
I'll buy almost anything. Thank you.
You fucking slut. So we could do the clock. We could do the clock. Cool beans. Inlay gemstones. Pop you in. And pop you in. It's actually quite good. Oh, well, from what I've seen clips of it and it looks like a decent enough show, but I enjoyed Big Bang Theory, but I don't think... And I never went on for any of the other ones. I just didn't really see too much point in it.
Better to be over-prepared, am I right?
Yes. Yes, you are. I think apart from the rag gun, I've everything else kind of leveled up, but that's...
We're starting to get an idea of your tastes, friend.
Your reload
Try that
speed.
on for size, without
State.
the necessary. Don't get yourself.
Gun rhymes are fun for a reason, stranger. Right, okay, and we will organize. What are you? You're the Red 9 stock. Why do you not sit up beside your own gun? What is Georgie and Mandy? That's, right, so you had Big Bang Theory, and then you had the spin-off of Big Bang Theory, which is Young Sheldon. And then Georgie and Mandy were characters from that, and they have another spin-off now as well. It's like the time Happy Days had the was it Chatsky spin-off? Yeah, which is a spin-off from the Big Bang Theory, which I find mental. But you know what, if it works for them, you let them work away with it. It's almost as mad as Hook not watching Scrubs. He expects me to do this all on my own, but I'm no Superman. I can't do this all. I went down and checked as well when I can change Mrs. Mailbox back to Cleo. And it's still another month. New Scrubs is brilliant. Very, very good.
She said meeting you once was enough.
Oh, I shot that out of there. Didn't even mean to. Lads.
Present for you.
Shit. Leon! Double spin-off? Yeah, it's something we only dream about in jokes, but yeah, double spin-off, which was weird. Like Hook says, apparently it was quite good, but I don't know how I would even keep up with them all. Yeah, we started Scrubs from season 1. Scrubs is phenomenal. I think Scrubs was one of the big shows that kind of normalized man love. Basically, but the characters from Young Sheldon are very good. I don't want to go through there yet. That's a fun noise. I'm going to fish. I'm glad that that thing had ammo inside its belly for when it exploded. It had 5 rounds of ammo for some unknown reason. Oh, fuck, first time you said you love me, you were watching Scrubs, and text me. Oh, was this McKinnon's? I was never a big fan of the Big Bang spin-off, so never interested me. Yeah, I was kind of the same. I enjoyed the Big Bang Theory because I'm a fucking nerd and got all the nerdy references. Because I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd man. The Big Bang Theory is shit. How could you fucking love that show? You're an idiot. Not even real science jokes. But he feels the need to force our opinion on others. We were chatting about, whose chat were we on about that the other night? Was it Ian's? And we were talking about Nickelback. And it was like, oh, I hate Nickelback, oh, Nickelback, oh, I'll kill myself, Nickelback is so bad. Oh, it's just like shit for years. I was like, alright, I'll stop jumping on the bandwagon of hating Nickelback.
What's the Elvish word for friend?
Fox, what's happening? Fox before today also, yes they do. They do. Fox, what is the story? That guy fell weird. Not going through there. No stories, just cold, hard facts. Amazing. Nickelback's first 3 albums are fantastic. They do, yeah, they go forward. I don't know exactly what time it is they flip, but yeah, it's tonight. Bro. Your dad did what? I'm not gonna say I love Nickelback, but yeah, I never sat and listened to the album, but the songs I've heard, yeah, you know, I wouldn't go see them live or anything. That wouldn't be my favorite artists, but at the same time, the hate they got was just, people just jumping on the bandwagon and hating them. Yeah, that didn't go well. Right, I need help. And a fish ain't gonna do it. I love Nickelback, and that's fair. You know, there's no... It's just that people just automatically hate them for no reason. And you can tell a lot of it is just jumping on the bandwagon. Like, there's bands I don't like that other people love. And I know I'm in the minority for it. But I don't try and tell people they're wrong. Nickelback were amazing. I listen to their stuff and but the recent Jack Black meme where he's singing it again, but Rod immediately jumped on Nickelback hate. Song about Jane is on my top 3 albums. And does Jane know about this? Asher, what is happening? Asher, you'll be proud of me. Asher, you will be proud of me. Never said the... It's called the Rick roll. Like, I get the Trick Ashley, but how does it roll? I don't know. I don't know why it's called that. That's a very good question. But Maroon 5's newer stuff I don't like so much. However, I've seen them live and they were class. You will be proud of me, Asher. So, one game that never gelled with me whenever I was younger and it came out was Final Fantasy 12. And with Ian recently playing through it, I was like, I'm going to buy Final Fantasy 12. And I sat this morning, I played it for a good few hours, and I was like, man, this is fucking class. I'm really getting on this. Not big into the Oasis either. Personal Gallery was very good. Ready, you just said the thing that I was going to say. I don't like Oasis. I don't like listening to their music. I don't like them. But I know that I'm in the minority and people fucking love Oasis, but I don't like Oasis. Conversation's going full circle. Yes, 12 is so good. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. And I always knew where your stream name came from, but now I fully understand. Sir.
Keep coming.
Coming, coming. Never made the connection with Ashley Dalmasca name until you said it there now, really? Oh, you met the one and only Ashley Dalmasca. See, there we go. Now we all know. Right, this goes right back through there. Right, okay. I'm just going to follow through. Just going to follow through. Right, I haven't been here yet.
No good.
No good. Egan, what's happening? Are all the residents really evil when you think about it? I think I'm the evil resident. I think that's a plot twist. She's a great character. I will tolerate zero slander. There we go. Just going to follow through. Well, that was just nasty. That's how you poop your pants. I tried to listen to them as well, but didn't like them either. I hate Noel Gallagher as well, because he's Man City fan and they support United. There's an unusual reason to hate somebody, but you know what? Okay. I'm not a fan of Oasis, so I'm not going to defend him. Can't say he's a good person. They seem like twats. That is also a thing. Oh, shit.
Out of the way.
We're just running. We're running. But to be fair, I don't claim to ever be a music aficionado or anything either. Do you have stuff for me? Stuff? Stuff? Give me stuff. She just got money. McDevil, what's happening? Welcome in. If she's so great, how come she's dead? What are we talking about? I am not very far in the story. Do not be spoiling the story for me, Happy Irish. I will not play Monster Hunter if you do that to me. I'll just be like, no more Monster Hunter. What? Don't listen to the odorous lies? I don't know what's happening there. Yeah, they both seem like knobheads. They do. The knobbiest of heads. This seems fine.
Another one. You guys are really starting to become a giant pain in my ass.
Leon, is there any stuff in here? Nope. Leon! Well, that didn't seem fair. So rude. Oh. Oh man, he got wasted. Fucking slapped him. Fucking donde estás, that boy? Donde estás his ass? That. Oh, fuck me. I wonder if I can get these guys from here. Couldn't even see that one.
One down.
One down. Well, two really. Leoric, it's pretty clever. Final Fantasy 12 lore shenanigans. No spoilers, I promise. Right, okay. Well, I do know that she was announced dead at the very start. Leon seems more clothed than Tumblr would have me believe. Talk about false advertising. We need to get a mod. We need to get a mod. But unfortunately, the problem with the mods is they will make him also bald. Nothing I've done. Captain Bosch von Rosenberg. Now listen to all the lies of the Empire. Fucking hell.
Shit. Sir Ugly's got me beat.
He really does, Leon. We're going to eat a big fish. It's the only way. He just nailed him too. I don't need... Well, there's money I'm missing over there, but fuck it. We'll risk it for the biscuit. I started a new game of Final Fantasy 12. It didn't seem like it took much convincing. Stop standing in the way of my explosives. Please, would you? Ooh. This seems like a silly place. Why am I here? Am I supposed to go up? only way is up. I can't get back up there. Does he stand beside anything explosive? That would also help. Nope, that doesn't.
Just wasting ammo.
There's a ladder. Fuck, the ladder's there. Right, Leon, run. Climb quick. Climb quick, you dick.
Yes. Cannon. Hope it works.
Now that big explosive shell thing sitting here, it's completely canon to the story. It's canon to the story. I crack myself up sometimes. And I crack Flemish up even more. Because he's fed up listening to me say words. God damn it, Leorc, see? He was typing it as I said it. You going downstairs, kid? You alright? You alright? Oh no, she fell down! Stab with that. I'm gonna go get our stuff. Pesetas! 500 pesetas. Nice one. Well, that doesn't sound safe. Is there anybody else up here now?
Get ready.
On the Got him.
Adios.
Cannon going mental. Adios, you son of a bitch. Well, this is fine. If you lads all wait there and wait your turn, I will get right to killing you. Starting with you. Here's the problem, gents. Y'all can't get me, because I'm up here. But on the other side of it, I can't get you either. Well played. Well, he died. He died like he lived. Explosively. I'd get you with a cannon. Fucking can. Then. What would happen if I jumped down there and didn't do that?
Alright. Open for traffic.
I did waste some ammo doing that though. Right, now lets me back up again. Right, okay. So if I did fuck up, no biggie. I got it. Speaking of fuck-ups, can I get back over to my cannon? Said his fucking face is hanging off. Is he still there?
Sorry. I've had my fill of you guys.
Do you know what? I know that there's a lot of contention about who's going to play the next James Bond. I think Leon should play the next James Bond. He has all the one-liners. It's great that there's a bottom up. Look, that's where you would install it. I mean, if I was making a bottomless put, that's where I'd keep it. Leon should really be turning around going, I'm going to throw a wrench in their works. Look at this hoe. Just one-liners about everything. Yeah. Why wouldn't we have a fucking hedge maze?
Ashley, where are you?
Leon! I think dig up Connery, not even acknowledge the fact that he's decomposed corpse. Just flop him out. For the usual love scene. Oh, Sean, can you do any sort of different accent? No. He will do Scottish accent no matter what.
I might hurt you again. I'm so scared.
It's okay. Put a bolt in her head. Ching.
Myself anymore. I was something else.
Oh, she must have been terrifying. I know.
You too?
Yeah, but I'm Leon. I'll fight it with fucking punchlines. And punches and roundhouse kicks. Imagine if that was the cure as well.
Moving forward.
The Las Plagas parasite is cured by roundhouse kicks.
We'll beat this.
Whatever way the roundhouse kick spins you, it takes blood away from your central organs and it doesn't allow the parasite to take over. That's fucking science and I just made that up.
Just give me a heads up before you stab me next time.
Oh, ready? I must have messaged earlier. I went to Lidl earlier and there were some young lads going around being young laddie with their trackies and they sounded like a gang from London. The whole time around the shop, I couldn't get the word twat out of my head. Something, yeah, there's times I see that as well. Or you look at somebody, like, my daughter had a friend in primary school, and they were good buddies, and the dad came over once to pick up his Wayne, and I looked at him and I thought, you're quite possibly the most drug dealery looking person I've ever seen in my entire fucking life. And it turns out he was a drug dealer, so there you go. But even just looking at him, I was like, my God.
Luis, where are you?
Luis!
Sorry, I screwed up. Come to my rescue, Prince.
But I judged correctly.
I'll show you charming, pal.
Come on. I'm in the ballroom past the courtyard. Don't be late to the dance.
Can't believe that guy.
He's in trouble. We can't just leave him, right?
When your sleep class is I've seen that. That's very good. Your man's videos are absolutely hilarious. I know you said you weren't going straight for another Resi. Well, no, I think I was. Well, hopefully the next thing's going to be me and Hook doing co-op of Resi 5 and then 6. But it all depends on his schedule and stuff too. The next, probably different sort of game I'm looking to play is I want to work my way through the Neo series. So I want to start off at Neo 1. I know that's not the best one by people, but I'm interested in them. I'm interested. No, it's all of the ammo. That's not a good thing. Shit, it's all of the ammo. Actually, what? I'm assuming you brought a gun. Never beat Nero 1, but I played from it, really enjoyed it. Oh, very good. I'll get some rifle ammo as well, because that's always a bit useful. Right, okay. I've seen a video as well recently about Resident Evil 9 and the realism of the reload mechanics compared to other games. And about how, you know, if you already have stuff in the chamber, he takes that into consideration. How good all that is. It's a bit of a waste, but it gets me all the resources. I got excited when you said it because for a moment I thought you meant Nier, which is great. I played Nier actually on stream not that long ago. Nier Automata. And it was phenomenal. It was really, really good. I need to play Nier Replicant, I think, at some point. But Automata was phenomenal. It was a good time. I was there. Great game. I own Replicant, but I haven't played it yet. So you're part of the problem, really. That was a loud noise. That's like somebody opened an old gate. That is not a flag.
Hey!
This is flag!
It's been lowered.
I don't know what this means. Flag. What does the flags mean? That's only one flag. There it is.
This is not a flag.
Right.
This is
A flag! Flag!
Fucking snake. Viper. It's giving me all the resources. It's worrying me. It's a derg. I shot the dog and Cleo came and looked at me. She judged me. She judged me for what I did. I deserve it. I deserve it. I deserve her hate. Also, what was that dog doing over here? Hmm? Hey? Hey? What did I hear? Is it on the floor above me? The fuck am I listening to? Yep, fuck it. Fuck it. It's probably on the floor above. Floor above. Floor above. I can't speak. Ruh, ruh, ruh. I don't know where it's coming from. All of the lads. I buy more games than I play these days. Yeah, I'm the same, but I'm starting to get better with them. And I like buying games to stream, because streaming means I'm more than likely, especially for VOD purposes, I'm more than likely going to finish them. And that's the thing, I was chatting with my mate about this, he's looking to get into streaming. I'm finding I'm getting through more games in stream than I'm on. Yeah, exactly. I have a mate who's looking to get into streaming, and he was saying, oh, I have a massive backlog of games, and I was all, that's a good thing about streaming, you do tend to go through them. It does help with that. To get through the backlog. I don't even think it was anywhere I couldn't get through earlier. I don't know. Still, as per usual, Resident Evil, an incredibly weird way to get up through a gate. But the last one is over that way. I don't know how I got him, but I did.
You alright?
Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. I'm fine, Ashley. I'm Leon S. Kennedy. Why do you keep saying your middle name for it? I'm Leon S. Kennedy. Sit, Ubu, sit. Good dog. Well, that's not good noise. I think there's one more running for me. Oh, there you are. Sir.
Next.
Oh, Jesus. He said it too. And I ignored him. Okay, we're going around this way and we're going to go up the steps. I thought I just opened it. Or, oh. I need to actually open that.
Ashley.
No problem.
You open that, and I will climb up. We could have done it that way around, though, to be fair.
Be careful.
Alright, up here. I was wondering, this just takes me back to the very start. Also, what if the wind brought down the flags and opened the gate? Like, it doesn't seem like a perfect system. Like,
Ashley, run!
oh shit, you can't go that way. Fuck. Right, okay. Lad.
Not bad, right? Shit!
Sir. I'm coming. He just ran right past me too. Fucker. I'm coming.
Hey! Hold on, I'll take care of him.
Roundhouse kick. Roadhouse.
One down.
Well, that's fun. Right, okay. Fucker. Wait, what I got? What I got? We'll rate this Viper. Viper. Let's go.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Hello,
Must be this way.
stranger. What you buying?
My name
Yes.
is Kyobu Masataka Oniwa! As I breathe, you will not pass the castle gate!
Greatest voice actor of all time, apart from Ben Starr. Hey, so welcome, man. I heard Leon is in here doing unnecessary backflips, and I've come to... He is doing unnecessary backflips. He definitely did it in the previous one, where there was two women with chainsaws coming through the wall, and he decided to do some silly backflips in the middle of it. Right, that just goes down there. Exactly.
And if you're anything like me,
Then you absolutely love me.
Welcome.
Oh, you saw my TikTok. All right, okay. Fair play. So them. Hey, you should see this. Nothing Leon does is unnecessary. No, that backflip was incredibly unnecessary. Like, he put himself in more danger to do it. It made 0 sense. Combat knife.
If you want a fighting chance out there, you best tune up your kit.
Well, that's a bit inappropriate. But it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Well, I can certainly do something with this.
We're going to get rid of the submachine gun ammo because I really don't need it.
Deal well struck. Came into some other bits and bobs too.
But it was hot, and that's, you know what, that's why we do the things we do. Just for that reason.
affairs are in tip-top shape, I assure you. Come back when you can actually pay, mate.
Jesus.
Your
That's,
weapons
that's a bit much.
Try that on for size.
We'll go for a reload speed. We'll max out that.
I still have some new items. You might be come back anytime.
Fuck you. Never agree with me again. Fair play. I've saved 34 times. I'm very cautious about saving because there's been many occasions where... Why can't I just live here? This is a nice part of the castle. I think Merchant would save us. I want a backstory for him. I want there to be a... I want there to be a game where it actually explains him and what's the story with him. I think he's a brilliant character.
Machine gun if you want to make quick work of the targets. If you can live with the
Oh, I've already done this one, haven't I?
High score, here we come.
Don't know what I was doing there. I was just staring off at the distance.
That was awesome.
That's it. You're an artist, mate. Reload.
I prefer the mystery. That's why I hate Bioshock 2. It explained too much. Yeah, but even if they had him doing something else, you in the game again, it'd be cool. Fuck's sake. He is speechless. Right, so I've got high scores on them. Right, come, let's go. So if you shoot the dynamite in his hand, it'll kill them. It'll kill all the ones that are around. Oh, right, okay, I never knew that.
Are you serious?
Oh shit, oh shit, nice trick. This is very difficult.
Sweet.
And that's the game.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it.
Didn't expect it. 3, 2, 1, begin.
You got this, Leon.
It's not where I put my shotgun. But we reloaded. There's something here. Well, that's not my... Actually, you're not helping. Good evening, internet daughter. What is happening? I didn't do as well on that one, but I got a wee token out of it. Fine. We're grand. We're grand. We're grand. Let's see what we get. Let's see what we get.
Good job, Leon. Have fun.
Did you have fun? Duchess Cats, what's happening? Welcome in. Oh, 5% off weapon upgrades. I could do that. No, maybe not now, but later on. So happy to see you. I'm good. Just got to bed. In my real life. Oh, very nice. Are you the same as us? Does you eat daylight savings tonight as well? I don't need the upgrades now. What are you? 30% health recovery from Vipers. Yeah, I could just stick that on anyway. It's not going to make much of a difference. Yes, tonight, yeah. It's the exact same with us. So we go from GMT to BST, British Summertime. Which will be interesting because it means I get an hour less sleep tonight, which is the part I hate. But it means also that we come onto some nice web, nice... why did I not go that way? Oh, I have to go back, I have to go back, I have to go back. Actually, you...
Rhymes with fun for a reason, stranger.
He said it! That's what I was waiting for. That's what I was waiting for.
Look, there's a statue up there.
I'd be lying if I knew what that was. Where are they? So there's 6 of these medallions altogether that we're going for. Yeah, it's tonight. It's a hard decision. Tempted to go to bed early so I'm not wrecked for work tomorrow. Sure, sitting here at 3 AM hunting animals for Red Dead. Chrissy, just do it. Just do it. Just coffee makes everything better. I'm not at work tomorrow, so I'm not too bad. Jesus! Wait and see what is happening. Fuck, that scared me. I'm off Monday, so yo, very nice. I am in work all next
hello,
week,
Papa.
but then
I was just about
off.
to. What have you put on my head? I do not like it. You've made me to look like the silly cows, and I am not a silly cow. I am a strong and agile German shepherd. Keine dumme Kuh.
Exactly, exactly. It's Jason Bourne.
Jesus, my head.
Ooh. So how's it going? It's going really well. I'm enjoying it. Good crack. Good crack. I do have to kill that guy though. This is annoying me. Actually, will you stop getting kidnapped? Oh, has she been stolen? I'm trying to, Ashley, but you keep getting kidnapped. You're not helping the situation. Is she kidnapped again? I can't shoot. What am I saying? What am I saying? There's a lot going on. The one go. So top to first section, you avoid the whole shenanigans by throwing a grenade at him before you ram the platform on top, or by using a bow launcher thingy to plant a bomb beside him. Alright, okay. Well, we're here now. She's been taken. She's been taken. Liam Neeson will be having none of it. I have no grenades. I do have a shotgun. Right, you, sir. Oh shit, I'm out of ammo.
Alright.
Right, he's down. Big Liam is on the case. Hey, Liam wouldn't put up for any of this. Liam would be all, I have a particular set of skills. Make me a nightmare for people like you. I'm almost out of ammo, and Ashley is down again. Leon!
Ashley!
I have abandoned my child. Oh, fuck, Fred. Got slapped in the face for that one. Shit. Right, okay, we need to heal up here. We got. Walked on that one.
Not bad, right?
Really, Leon? That was fucking horrendous. I assume 3. Yeah. So this is the 4th one we're on at the moment. We've done 1 to 3. We're doing the remix as we go. But I'm enjoying it. Ooh, it's candy. I don't know if I said it as well, but anybody in chat's not following Duchess Cats or Real Latency. Real Latency's a real life buddy of mine as well, and definitely give them a follow. I know everybody in here probably already is. We're all a really good community. Everybody follows everybody. We're like weird stalkers. I need to go up the other side and get that lantern, I think. What's your first experience with Resi? I played this one before. But it was my first with like Resi 3 Remake and all. There's like 10 of us. We all just follow each other and go around in a circle. Yep, if one goes to Tesco's, we all go to Tesco's. That's the thing. It was whenever I did that daytime stream, I just was all, I'm going to play some Resi. And then just want to continue on with it. And I'm kind of got really into the lore and stuff with it too, which is cool. And all the like unique stuff about the behind the making of the games. Twitch centipede, exactly. Twitchipede. Shotgun shells, right? We're gonna reload. See, now I have plenty of ammo, but I was running really low there previously. Oh, there's more shenanigans, lads.
There you go.
Right, let's keep going.
I'm good, thanks.
Right, okay. Was there any of the wee... Oh, did I miss stuff? What did I miss? Resources? Oh, we're going back for them. We need them. Oh, smash this as well. We're going back for the resources! And I do realize I'm saying that weird, but I'm allowed to because I'm old and fucking weird. What did we miss? Were they on the floor? Or were they on the tables? Is that why I missed them? Yep, flash grenade and resources. The resources. Like, I know the games can be a bit cheesy and they can be a bit campy, but you know what? They're fucking fun. They're a good laugh. Right. You were almost a Jill sandwich. Was I, Barry? Was I? Barry. Well, it seems fucked up. That's like me. A bit cheesy, a bit campy, but really fucking fun. You know what, Reddy? You're right. I feel like I'm missing something down here. Yep, it's on that. It's on here. You crafty bitch. I complain about Ares. A lot of the lore I was told them books and CG films, and it's just terrible. Right, okay. I didn't even know they had the books and all out. It says there's one kind of up here somewhere, but I can't see it. Ah, there you are, yeah, crafty fucker. Right, we try this next room now and see how we get on. So the games start, things are happening, you have no clue. And you're almost expected to know it. Right, okay.
Hey, Leon, there's some armor. Bet you could use it like a bulletproof vest.
I bet it's going to come alive and try and kill me.
Too bad. I think you'd look pretty dashing.
Control yourself. Looks like Leon. She needs to control herself. Well, these shenanigans. Like that's a definite gonna come try and kill me. Well, this is fine. We are going to craft flash grenades. What else can we... Flash grenades! And some nonsense stuff like Chris is buff as fuck. Yeah, the man just fucking punches boulders. And the fact his appearance changes for every single... At least Leon looks like Leon, but Chris does not ever look like Chris.
Okay, be careful.
Like, I've seen him in Resident Evil Village, and he just looks completely different to every other game. There's a bit Chris gets involved in certain scenarios, but Leon works in certain areas in relationships between characters. Leon just does his own thing. Hand grenade. Wait, is there anything else I need to be picking up here? Ah, there's resources. Let's head. Right. Yeah, I see it.
Come on, you can't be serious.
Oh, I have to get them out first before I can do that. Shit, right, okay. That'll do it. Shit, there's more? Right, okay. More bullshit, more like. Sir. Nope, they do not. And more shenanigans, right? Can we craft one more? Yes, we can! He goes to the gym and goes on a diet, and it's pretty obvious if you really understand the lore, but his face completely changes, that's the thing. That and a lot of steroids. Well, actually, it's because Wesker kicked his ass and he swore he'd get strong enough to fight him. There's so true again. Why not just shoot him? Why not just murder Wesker? Eh? Murder is always the answer. Oh shit, there's 3 this time. Fuckers. Yeah, get away from Leon.
Go to hell, you rusty piece of shit.
Yeah! Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah. Nighty night.
We're all good. Nighty night. Nice.
Leon!
They have to catch her there. Right, okay.
My hero.
So the lady gets strong enough to punch her.
Sure you're all right.
Hero.
Burned, are you?
Well, Wesker's a preservation, so he's incredibly fast, so shooting isn't easy. I bet I could shoot him. Wesker should get a spin-off game. He should. He's a hero. He's a hero of the Resident Evils. You know what? I might actually go a quick break and grab myself another drink. So we haven't actually done it in a while, but the Be Right Back screen is going to pop on, and it's going to have our voting game as well. So if you want to do exclamation mark vote 1 for the first game, exclamation mark vote 2 for the second one, and I'll see you in a bit.
When the silence falls, empty throne waiting, something's building in the air, voices rising, the battle lines are drawn to your side, no going back now. Cast your vote of kings, crown the world and rule your heart. Vote of kings, tear the old world apart. Which legend takes the throne? Cast your vote of kings. Soldiers from distant lands, crystals and blades colliding, stealth through shadows, time itself rewinding. The battle lines are drawn, choose your side, history in your hands. Cast your vote of kings, crown the one that rules your heart. Vote of kings, tear the old world apart. Which legend takes the throne? Cast your vote of kings. Seven versus eight, Snake versus Shine, Shine, every memory at stake. Remember when we first believed, this was turned to prophecy. Now decide what kingdoms bleed. Cast your vote of.
Ew, welcome back, folks. Portal 2 has been added to the top 10 Hall of Fame. Who is actually in the top 10? I know that nobody really has a definitive lead yet. But what we got? What we got? Is it just all one word? Forget me on command. There's 50-50. Skyrim was robbed. So a couple of them. Final Fantasy 9 actually has 3 runs. That is number 1 at the moment. 7's in there. Metal Gear Solid, Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 4, Advance Wars, Chrono Trigger, Dark Souls, God of War. Good crowd. Vegas, New Vegas is sitting there with 2 ones. Could have almost moved to 3. Could have went to 3. Right. We're gonna get back at it actually now. Reg Portal 2 1 through 50-50 twice shenanigans. That's the way democracy works. I don't know if I should heal up or I could just... No, I'm not going to take the one here, but it's a fucking waste. What can I craft here? Handgun ammo? Yes, let's go. Let's go with some handgun ammo. What can I craft for you? Is that? Was the orc voted for them too? I smell fixed. No, I don't get any extra weight in my vote. It does, it goes to a 50-50 as soon as... Ah, look at these son bitches.
You don't think they're gonna move, do you?
Don't know. Cubic device. Before time began. What the spoil? Here. Lad. Don't I waste ammo on you. Got him. What was that time for? Oh, do I have a mission to kill rats? Shit, I haven't been doing it. Oh, it gave me ammo. Oh, this is back here, right? Okay. Oh, there's a flash grenade I've missed back there as well. Shit. Bet you it's upstairs. Is it upstairs? Nope, it's just sitting here. Cool beans. Apparently there's one of them over there, but I can't see it. Damn, is your swampy backtrack? It depends. Some areas, they just keep coming through, but areas like this, not so much. Right, I need to... Right, square lockbox, so I have to do that. That's objective location. Location!
Oh, nothing but the finest wet.
And you are... You're square in shape at the side. So this... Yep, that's it. Sweet! Meat. Now, some enemies, there will be... yeah, locations are, until you do something. But not overly often, thankfully. I could do that, but it's putting on two of the same, which I'm not a huge fan of. It might not appear, but if you backtrack after a certain event. Yeah, and it's the same with the other Resident Evils. Like in Resident Evil 2, that if you don't board up the windows, they'll come back in through. But then there's other points where if you progress the story, they just have respawned enemies or new enemies, which is always fun.
Oh, breaks over us. Welcome. Got some
Stranger.
Hail, stranger. Your valuables won't do you much good in the grave.
Don't want to do I don't need to do a case upgrade yet.
Why not try your hand at a new gun next time then?
Maybe we'll think about it. We'll think about it. I'll have a think about it and I'll come back. I still need to get more of the things in this area. But what's this? What's this? Oh, let's just kill the rats. Right, okay. Lovely.
Statue of some snakes.
Statue of some snacks.
Huh. A dining hall.
Eat here? No thanks.
Right, puzzle here. Right, okay. Anything? Right, so what we're looking at? What we're looking at? Right, so the king stands there with wine, bread, and she's there with nothing. Right, okay. I'm gonna break everything! But break it! It's mine. It's mine is mine, and what's mine is mine. So, we have to find out where we're sitting. And it actually might be... Did she even have any butter or anything? No, just nothing.
So, you do a lot of missions like this?
Well, yeah. But I'm not used to having such good company.
Nope. Nope.
Is that
Get up.
a compliment?
Take it however you want.
Stop flirting, Leon. Don't do it. And it was the wine and all, wasn't it? It was this one here. No.
Nothing's happening.
Right, is there another one he can sit on? Maybe the one over here? I know I should probably look at the amount of cutlery and stuff they have. Ah, did it! We did it! We did it! Leon!
We figured it out.
There, we got all the medallions, which is good. I got the snack. We need to kill some rats, which I haven't seen any about in here. Should maybe actually go back. Oh, I heard one. Fucking definitely heard one. It does tell me what that is. How many rats is it? 3 rats. I've killed one. But to be fair, I only recently found the sign telling me they killed him. But I heard one when we came in here. Maybe, would it have been in here? No? There he is. Sir. Sir. There we go. I'm assuming there's one more in the first area I went, did they? Where you drive yourself nuts looking for the third one. You can't find it. What do you mean I can't find it? Right, you can find 2 during a space. The third one you can't find until after this section. Well, that seems a bit discriminatory. Right, so lion, snake, goat. So you play the whole other section. Right, okay.
Leon, the stairs!
She's gonna get fed up saying my name over and over and over and over again. Run, Ashley, run! Leon, you still have loads of guns. You could still shoot everybody. Good boy. Look at him go. Fucking legend. ¿Dónde estás?
I won't run. Wait for me, Leon.
Because the third rat is in here. And can she even do anything to get it? No. She can do fuck all. And she can look at it, about it. Lovely. Do-do-do-do. Well, that looked a bit dear. Sir, can you just die? No, no. And he's gonna come alive. The resting forebears answer the chosen time. I love the fact that she's a suitcase as well. Break it, Ashley, break it.
The hands move.
That's handy. The dinosaurs.
It's locked.
Key. Ooh, foxy lady. Scratch me eyeball. Eyeball scratch.
A hidden staircase? It must
Cool
be a
beans.
secret room or something.
How do I get up that? I know. Oh, just in here. Anything to read in this library now? Keys. It's a great old bunch of keys. And is that something I can lift? No, I can just use a thing in there. And we have armor. Or more or less. Shambling bastards.
Which one is it?
Ooh, which one is it? That's a good question. The bird? No. This one? Yes.
One now.
Lovely jubbly.
Leon?
Ashley, are you okay?
Hang on. I'll figure something out.
That voice actress must have got really annoyed just constantly shouting Leon all the time. Is this the same clock from before? I'm supposed to like line these up or something. What we'll save here just in case. $11:04.
Maybe.
Cool beans. Whatever happened there, I don't know. Ooh. Birdie. Birdie. Signia. Protect your faithful servant. Yeah. So 11:04. Yeah. Oh, where are we?
I saw another clock like this one. It's all good.
I should have turned around there. Fucked up.
Get lost! Don't look back! Don't look back!
Run, run, run! Where were we? Oh, there it is. 11th floor. Telling you, it's hard to be a homemade pizza. What? What are we talking about? Why are we why are we a homemade pizza? I don't understand. Pourquoi? Huh? I am confuzzled and confused. Why are you following me, sir? Oh, I need to push the elevator. Right, okay.
Come on!
Right, okay, let's go. Hard to beat a homemade pizza. Right, okay. Yeah, because otherwise that made no sense. Why aren't we talking about homemade pizza? It's a real mystery. I don't mind it. I don't mind it. I don't mind it. I do like a nice takeaway pizza, though. But what's your pizza of choice? If you're ordering... What? I'm done with armor. This room. Look at this room.
Didn't I just say I was done?
Actually, you know what? You did. I don't think they listened, though. Hopefully they don't, this doesn't have to be done in a certain order. Is it just a matter of lighting them all? Where's the last one? Oh, it's over there. Silly me. Cool beans. Come on, lads. Come on after me now, eh? Eh? See, they can't. Just this one? It is. Sweet. Ooh, cool boy. Yeah, light them all. Light them all.
The heck?
And you clearly go here. Alright, I have to start lifting puzzles in. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Can I swap them out? Can I swap them out? Alright, that doesn't go there. What are you talking about? That doesn't go there. You go... Right, so the moon goes over there, actually. 100% would be a really... 100% I would really be hard getting... being a homemade pizza. Yeah, but what would be your favorite type of pizza? You watch... if you... Whenever you get to order a pizza, or whenever you get to pick a pizza, especially if you have pineapples on it. I don't... you know, I don't mind pineapples on it now. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. Volcano. I knew you would go for something spicy. Meat feast. Nice. Jalapeno with some sort of meat is... Ooh, very nice. Do you know do you ever try Mina's pizza? She does a class margarita pizza and it's beautiful. I'm just going to run. Just going to run for it. I haven't... No, definitely. See her margarita pizza? It is beaut. It is class. This seems safe.
Okay. Good
Looks like I want a pizza now. I think we should all have pizza. It's Saturday night. Let's treat ourselves. Let's all get pizza. Treat yourself. We got pizza tonight. What pizza did you get? Did you go for your volcano? They put 2 different hot sauces on it. What is wrong with you? Who hurt you? Who hurt you, Flemish? Domino's is shite, but I see when they do. Decadence is amazing. I had it all the time in uni. Sauce in between the pizza layers. Right, okay. I've never tried that one. A pizza with barbecue chicken and bacon, but I ordered chicken and bacon if given the choice. Ooh, nice. Right, I can't remember where I'm going to. Good. Right, come on. They don't do it anymore. Which wasn't a good thing we were banking out. Oh, your belly. Love a good hot sauce, as long as there's flavor. But you're obsessed with hot sauce. You fucking really love the hot sauce. Am I even going the right way? Where is it I need to get the? I don't think it was there. I think it was upstairs to where Leon was. Yeah, you have a hot sauce delivery man now, which is when it becomes an obsession. I don't think I was supposed to go this way. You know what? Fuck it. Fuck it. Oh, shit. Don't fuck it. It really wasn't this way. But where am I supposed to be going? There's a way out of the library over that way.
Almost there.
Are we? Are we, Ashley? Are we almost there?
Leon!
Ashley, are you alright?
Yeah. Give me a sec. I'll get you out.
You know what? I used to really despise and really kick off about pineapple on pizza, but I don't hate it as much now anymore. Guy makes good hot sauces, what can I say? You're obsessed! You love your hot sauces!
Can you make it down?
I don't mind hot sauces. I love... See, Frank's hot sauce. I used to... talk about Domino's, I used to order the chicken wings and Frank's hot sauce, and it was beaut. Because I really like that. But, you know, I wouldn't overly go mad for hot sauce. Barbecue sauce, actually. I remember... Oh, shit. I remember doing this part and messing up to where a place where I got blocked with the armor dudes, frozen, blocking it. Yeah, you just crouch. You have to go under them. It's scripted that it goes like that anyway. You can't handle spicy at all. I don't mind spicy, but if it's too spicy beyond the point where it's actually nice to eat, you may as well eat battery acid. Fucking connoisseur, eh? 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 Oh, fancy sauce, man. Eh? Yeah, I like chicken wings with Frank's hot sauce. What you gonna do about it? Jalapeno, Frank's hot sauce is nice, though I will say that.
So, what's become of the amber?
Sorry, nothing yet. But my little helper...
Why is she holding it so far away from her face?
Everything will work out just fine.
As long as you can keep your dog under control.
He's a good boy. Predictable.
He's a good boy.
Fine.
He's a good boy.
Keep your butt. But don't come crying to me if you get bit.
Hey, I love Frank's. I enjoy the hot sauce. But that one's up there in my opinion. See, I'm the same. Let say I like it. I could be just a basic bitch, but I enjoy Frank's. Because you don't need the kind of walkie-talkie right up to your mouth hole. The audio becomes terribly distorted and impossible to understand. Also, they never said over. Neither one of them said over. And that is rule number 1 in walkie-talkie etiquette. Nah, pure pants. You have to remember as well, latency, when Flemish has an opinion, it is always wrong, so the opposite of what he says is the truth. Or the me then.
Changed your mind yet?
Ooh, I get my hot sauce. It's homemade from Voodoo Priest and Larn and delivered to my door.
Big is about to go down in the throne room. Babysitting's tough, huh?
Banger, actually. Banger? Didn't even know her.
Perfect.
Right, we're just going to go in here and just stock up.
Care of a request, did ya? Good stuff, stranger. I've got something new for you, mate. Killing me. Years haven't been kind to us, I suppose.
I don't think I've got the upgrade for the Red 9 yet. I'd have to completely max out all of the... Right, okay, I have to max out everything before I can get that. Cool beans. Rate of fire, upsy daisies.
As you wish. Get pleasant.
Turns out he's up the road for me, and that's why he delivered to my door myself whenever I ordered them from the website. You son bitch. When I answered the door, he was surprised. It was me because I always buy sauce at St. George's Market in Belfast. You're sending his kids through university? Single-handedly? Well, I want to actually get some resources for some ammo.
Better to be over-prepared, am I right? Come back when you can actually pay, mate.
I just bought something off you. Stop being a wee bitch about it.
Come back.
And we stack that, and then we shall right. Not much. Right, okay. Emerald and Sapphire. Ooh, I can actually sell one of these now, can't I? No, they're all the same color. Shit. I want to actually go through and make sure they're all different colors. Oh, I can get rid of them. Don't know why I was hanging on them. Sorry. There's a bit of backtracking because I want to sell stuff. I want my fancy guns.
Welcome. I've got something new for you, mate. Thank you. Stocking up while you can.
Yes. Yes, I am. You want better? He delivered hot wings and burritos this last Sunday. He does food deliveries on his sauces. All right, and he also brought you some for free. He just knows you too well. It's a problem. I suppose that monstrosity of a Nightbee ward is much stronger than the others. He cut down our best with a single strike. This, ooh, right, okay. That's 8 spindles. Right. It's the library and all we're going under. I think that continues on the story that way. I need to find this rat. Where the fuck is he? Here, boy. I can hear him. Oh, here he is. Oh, you dirty little bastard. Do not make me shoot you. I don't want to waste ammo on you. Well, he did ask. I just didn't show up, to be clear. Got him. Is it worth going back and through here? There's a merciless night that they take out down here, potentially. But is it worth doing? Well, Mosh, what's your opinion? 100%. Let's go. So I can also go into the library. Where'd your man go? Asher says, yep. Pretty sure there's some pots that Ashley couldn't break as well. Yeah, seen them about as well, like this one. Waja! Get all the potatoes. The potatoes. Is this the guy? This is Jabroni? Where's everybody else? Everybody else is gone. He's a couple of buddies with him too.
Alright. Time to get medieval on your asses.
Do it, lady. Oh, fuck. Nope. I just died straight away. I just died. Oh, Leon. Fucking hell. Why can't I equip my grenade?
Present for you.
Better focus on the other two, then worry about him. Yeah, maybe. Shit. He is a beefy boy. Let's go. Got him. Anything else? I know there's some goodies around here as well. I used a lot of ammo to take that down, but fuck it. It was probably worth it. I can't squeeze through there. Okay. Ooh, and a ruby. Yeah, totally worth it. I don't know why I actually couldn't break any of those things, though. It seems like she could just even just push it over. You know? Levels can be high, but it's normally worth going out of your way to get them. Yeah. Ooh, there's still a coin over there. Also go to the save room up the stairs Ashley was on. There's a wee cage you can use the cube thing in. Yep, okay. Before time began, there was the cube. I got it itchy ear. It was there in the library, wasn't it? Was it up here? Can't even remember. There's definitely something there. Square lockbox. It is down there. Oh, here. So it did come to the right location. Oh, like a glove. Lads. Lads, look what I got. I got a thing. Let me continue on. Oh. Uncle Flange, what's happening? Like a glove. Exactly. Oh, and we've this one. Or is that the one Ashley did use? Nope, she didn't. Oh, well, has the stream been lurking a bit? Not a problem. Thank you very much for coming on. I am having an absolute blast with this. I think we got a lot of the stuff here. Now, we don't need to go down that left. We do need to be breaking this. Wrecking the place. Getting that handgun ammo that I wasted on those guys. Yeah, she already got that one. Cool beans. This is where she came out and your man was acting a whack. Right, down here now, and we'll hand on these quests. See what kind of... We got that assault rifle as well, which is pretty nice.
So that's a request done and dusted, eh? Well, look at you, mate. Got some rare...
2 in the one go.
Sales, stranger.
Right, here's the thing.
What's that? How have we procured these curiosities? You don't want to know, mate.
Golden Links, I could probably do that one.
I do you for?
Oh, I've actually quite a bit.
Come back.
So I could do... Yes, I could do the... I'm not going to do that one yet. I could do that. But it means missing out on that. But this is worth more, so fuck it. Fuck it. And... Same color. Should I just go for it? No, you know what? He might actually have ones to buy.
I've got something new for you, mate.
I think red is the one I have.
There's some things. A wise choice. I know. I say that a lot. Don't.
Right, so at least with these, I can kind of alternate it a little bit. Okay. I know I probably shouldn't just to get the full worth out of it, but I kind of need the ammo.
Welcome,
Stranger.
stranger. Ooh, I'll pay a pretty penny for that. Came into some other bits.
I thought matching colors was worth more.
Knife
Is it?
is
I thought it was 3 separate colors was the most.
difference between life and death.
Oh, and that's the new one there, isn't it?
Dazzled, are you? Our craftsmanship demands no less.
61k. They really just finished this Red 9 off.
Anything
Right, okay.
else I can help you with? Let's come back.
Depends. There's a chart that'll tell you. Yeah. That's done now anyway. It's grand. It's fine. I got a wee fucking small fortune for them, so I'm not too worried. Right, now we will continue on. Our Red 9 is fucking packing now, brother. Ammo, not so much. But we can make flash grenades, and we can make handgun ammo. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Out here now. But usually 4 different ones I think's worth more, yeah.
Fucking monsters.
Yeah. Just gonna keep topping up that handgun ammo. Because this is my baby. Pairs are good with one. Yeah. Watch them explodey bastards. They're giving me good gunpowder, which I don't mind. I don't know why they're caring about gunpowder, but they just are. One thing I haven't taken advantage of in this playthrough, which I normally would have done, is the treasure maps. I just haven't wanted to go through and actually just find all the treasures. I know that's a silly sausage thing to do, but you know what? Fuck it. Bum 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 bum. What about you, Asher? How are you getting on? I've seen you're playing Kingdom Hearts. Those are games I haven't played since they first came out, and I absolutely loved them. See Kingdom Hearts 2? That game was special. As a massive Squall fan as well. You know why. We're gonna just go for that. Yeah, I'm enjoying playing them again. They're really good games. The one I couldn't get into though was Kingdom Hearts 3. I think it's because a lot of it was very grindy.
On your pest control.
Oh, Leon, you quippy bastard, you. Oh, he tried to get me, but he couldn't. I don't think that does anything to me. 3 grindy? No need to grind in 3. Gives you a million ways to blitz things. Ah, well, that is true. I probably just wasn't doing right. Two's very good. Easily the best out of the trilogy. Yeah, I agree. I agree. That tends to be the way of things for that kind of era as well, wasn't it? A lot of the games, the second one was the best one. Like it was Mass Effect 2, Uncharted 2. Oh, it's that door. Right, okay. So it was Mass Effect 2, Uncharted 2, Kingdom Hearts 2. Just all of the 2s, wasn't it? It's visually amazing. And see some of the moves in it were phenomenal. Dark Souls 2. Well, actually, you know what? Hook is enjoying himself with, so... And I haven't actually played it, so I can't judge.
Next.
I don't know where I'm going here now. I don't think I went up these steps. No, Dark Souls 3 is definitely the best of those. I have Dark Souls 3, but I haven't played it. I played the first one. We need to take some help. Ah, no, sir, I shot you. Several of the times. So I call bullshit. Been a long time since I played 3. I'm gonna enjoy when Hook starts playing 3 as well, when he starts getting into that. But that's what I'm saying. My next one kind of after this is going to be probably Neo. I'll be right back. Get a pint of water. No, that's something I need to do. I need to drink a lot more water. I don't drink enough of it.
There we go.
Ah, crap. Never even seen him. How am I getting back over there? Look at this. Ooh, ammo. Ammo. Fuck, I didn't see him. I'm going to end up dead if they keep doing that to me.
None left.
Thought I opened that. Oh, opened over there. See, this is one of them ones where everybody just keeps respawning for some fucking unknown reason. I need to figure out a way around. I'll just go through the middle. Fuck away off, would you? My knife's fucked now because of you. Run, Leon, run! Oh, I don't like us. Give me loads of herbs. Is there another one? Excuse me? Sir? Sir? Ooh, handgun ammo. Nice one. There it is. And we go forth. Carry on, my wayward son. Oh, sandwiches.
Great. There's 2 of them. Very good.
My God. Lazy, what's happening? Didn't know you were a Kansas man. What? Kansas? Lazy, what is happening? Fuck. Fuck, run! There's a big thing coming for us! Run! Run, man! Bigger Halo. Well, with the bugs always respawning, it can allow you to get more. Yeah, that is true. Get all that monies. Walk away off. Away with you. Haha, you got stab here, buddy. Run, Forrest, run! That is exactly what I'm trying to do. Ah, they've got me. They've got me. They've got me. What have I got? Ain't got much. But I got grenades. No, I don't have grenades. Why are you not equipping that? Shit! Fuck, he came out of nowhere. He got me. Fuck, I'm getting my ass handed to me here. Leon, I told you to equip it. What are you doing? Ah, we're equipped. We're dead. Water gathered. Cat's fed. All good. Carry on, my wayward son. Oh, right, okay. I get you now. I get you now. I did. I was too much in concentration mode. Locked in. I'm locked in. I'm locking the fuck in. I don't know why I need a second grenade shortcut, but you know, this is where we is at. These guys are right pricks. They are 2 Wolverine bastards. No, I don't want to take a picture of him. waiting for the two of them to make a wee run. Oh, fuck it. Grenade! ¿Dónde estás? Ooh, right, okay. Shit. Would you fuck away off, would you? I'm trying to shoot these other guys, and you're acting a wee dickhead. Right, away. Is there another bell? There is. Fucking hell. That was a nightmare. He dropped the unicorn horn. He's horny. Right, I need health now, lads. You can fuck away off, love. GG's, well, it ain't over yet. I have a slither of health and some prick running around here. There we go, green hair, that's what I'm talking about. I had health anyway, and I just didn't use it. Right, you're fucked now, love. I gotta see them bells. Where'd she go? ¿Dónde estás? You deserved that. That was a you issue. You caused that. I've got a unicorn horn. Do I need to get I've got this stock up and stuff now because that was an absolute travesty. I wasted so much resources on that. There we go, unicorn horn. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Boot knife. Anything else for me to lift? I don't think so. I think that is everything. Right, okay. Cool beans. Leon, why the fuck are you so out of breath? Reload all weapons while you can. You know what? Good shout. Good shout, Baker Halo. Thank you very much. Because I'm going to walk in here and be all like, no, nothing's reloaded. Lads, can you wait? That's what you do sometimes, kind of miss the old Resident Evil thing where it would reload from the... Just take that just in case. Where it would reload from the menu. But even at that, reloading from the menu was a fucking nightmare.
Ashley!
Leon, stop! No, don't come any closer!
Are you hurt?
Watch out!
Please.
Ew.
Continue. Do not resist, my dear. It serves only to make you suffer. all the worse.
Please, please.
You sick!
Lovely. She needs some form of cream to clear that up.
Aquí nos despedimos, Señor Kennedy.
That would fucking rip your hands to shreds. That would burn like fuck. There is no way your arms aren't getting ripped off that. Leon, you're superhuman. Well done, kid.
Hang in there, Ashley. I'm coming for you.
Just because that guy's short and a dictator reminds me of Lord Farquaad. He does give off them vibes. He does definitely give off them vibes.
The ghost, huh?
What? The gloves reduce the damage a little. Yeah, it would hurt like hell. You would rip the skin off your hands. Yeah, fair play, Leon. Fair play. Leon! Squelchy. This person's gonna be still alive, aren't they?
Talk about sticking the landing.
Hey! Fucking. Well played, Leon. That was like an old level in Mortal Kombat where you'd finish them in a certain way and then uppercut them on a level, and they'd come down and land in the spike pit of spikes. And it was always the balance of, do you want to do a fatality or do you want that to happen? Yeah. Ramon Salazar. Just in case there's any wee items in here for me. Fucker. Like, I'm taking my time going through this. But it'd be interesting to see speedrunners knew what way they just tear through these games. Like, the Resi 2 one is really impressive. And it's just straight on here, down it. That is somewhere. Can't get under it. Can I grab it through it? No, let me grab it. Let me touch it. Let me touch it. I got a fish as well. 2 for 1. 1 and 2 easier. I find this one trickier. It's very linear. But there's so many fights that are almost mandatory. Yeah, you can't just run past them. Yeah, we're, like you say, in 1 and 2, you can just kind of skip. And avoid enemies as much as possible. Another one dead. How long has it been since I threw him down here? These guys were alive for a bit then. Elegant brown. Right, how am I getting in there? No, I got him. I think when I went up that platform I was supposed to do something and I didn't. Bum, 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 bum. Go away for like 10 minutes in your creepy flooded cave. What the fuck? This is what happens. This is what happens. I can't be left alone unsupervised. My God! Stone cold! Combine them too, at least. Would you like? I do like that the devs try different things with each game. Each franchise doesn't get stale. I do admit that some things they've done with it more trouble than it's worth. At least they try. Yeah, that is true. That is true. I mean, I think 9, a lot of people are liking because it does hit that sweet spot between horror and action. You know, when you alternate between the characters. I can't wait to play 9. I haven't played it yet. But I'm slowly working my way through them. 2 was my favorite. Loved Resident Evil 2 Remake. You playing the VR versions? Oh, hell no. I don't have a VR headset either, so thank fuck. But Flemish said he's going to do it. He's going to play a VR version of Alien Isolation. 9 did what 6 wanted to do, but failed. Well, I haven't got there yet, but it'll be fun playing that with Hook. Am I fuck? See, he is fuck. Oh, I need to take some health. I know Ian, the internet, did that, and he scared the absolute bejesus out of himself doing Alien Isolation and Madison and a whole pile of other games in VR. But you know what? Fair fucks to him. Hello, stranger.
I have something I think you like.
Also, it weirds me out that you're down here.
Welcome. Got some rare things on sale, stranger.
Only with gemstones. How many gemstones does it have?
Killing me. Years haven't been kind
I never did that one. I've done quite a few of them, though. Must admit, I've not played any game after the first and second OGs, but I've watched all the games through streamers. The remakes, I'm playing through the remakes at the moment and really having a lot of fun with them. I'm really liking the remakes.
Some other bits and bobs too, mate. Give that the care it deserves, mate.
See, I want to get this one. I want to get this one. What to have to sell? Elegant crown and butterfly lamp. An ornate beetle. I could get rid of that.
A deal well struck.
2 of them. I don't have anything else. We'd have to get more jewels.
Some new items you might be interested in.
Have a grenade.
My
Magnum ammo.
Tip-top shape, I assure you.
Striker.
Don't worry. I offer repairs. Come back anytime.
Good man. Usually every 3's the weakest, but 9's the strongest. Lastly. See, that's the ones that's kind of not worrying me, but I know that 6 is a lot more horror based. Thankfully, I bought all of them except for 9 in that more recent Capcom sale because they all went down to like really, really cheap. It was a phenomenal sale. Six is more action, you mean? No, well, the start of 6 isn't. It's very hide and run from Jack Baker.
Not good.
That's not a good button. I don't like that button. It wasn't very nice. I shall eat my fish. No, you're thinking... Oh, yeah, 7. 6 is the one that you love. Right, okay. I got it. Flemish is a massive Resident Evil 6 fan. I know that they've got a lot of grief, but Flemish is like, it's the best. Don't let my veins circle through my entire body. So this guy's testing himself. Well, that's good. That's always good. It's best to test on yourself. Not even a good game. 6 is the one I despise. No, it's not. Flemish, you're confused. You've confused yourself again. It's your favorite. Of all the Resident Evils, it's your favorite.
These people are not right.
They're left. That's why. Left for dead. Power has been turned off. For some equipment, including the elevator, can be restored by flipping the circuit breaker at the back of the lab. Yeah. That's not going to lead to shenanigans and hijinks and fucking bullshit. Gun rhymes are fun for a reason, stranger. We're not going to use the weapon attachments. Oh no, they are equipped. It just they sit separate. Look, that one there is equipped. It just sits separately for some unknown reason. Well, that's fun. Where am I going? I can't even go in there. No, I have to go the whole way into the bottom. Well, that seems like a fun thing. Fuck.
You're Ramon's lapdog. Son of a bitch.
That's some bullshit.
Frozen's a good look for you. Eat this.
Do not say it because you can't beat it. It's still not one bit fun. I beat it. 34 fucking hours it took me to beat it. Yeah, but what about the game? I played it much shorter and co-op my challenge.
Looks like it's gonna take more than that.
Where'd it go? Wait, where am I going? I have to make it to the elevator, which bullshit is going to happen about halfway through, isn't it? This looks like bullshit. That's a bullshitty thing to happen. Bullshit! Fucking stop your bullshit, sir. Figuring where am I going? Where am I going? Right, I'm going up and then left. Do I have to run around here? Oh my god. Alright, this is silly. Silly shenanigans. Where is he? Yeah, I'm going to die soon. Oh, I was never in this room before. Let me open the door, would you? Does anyone know how long I have to wait for this thing to... I can hear, baby. Surprised if you know, could be fun. Oh, so will I, man. I will be surprised if I don't die here now. Oh shit. Fuck, 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 fuck. Backflip! I don't know how long I have to wait for this thing. And he wasn't even there. Fuck! There he is. Elevator's still not there.
The bad guys are in there.
The bad guy's is right behind me and he is about to murderize me. Ooh, the elevator. Run, Leon! Run! Run like the wind! Whew. I hate that section first time. You got a magnum? I don't got a magnum. How is ice cream supposed to help in this situation? Fuck knows.
Pitiful little lamb. Your suffering can end, just as it has for our newest daughter, who has joined us in communion. She is the flesh of our blood. My faithful disciple will show her the path. Go now. Deliver to these vagrant children their salvation. As you...
Ooh, matron. This guy seems like he'll be a good friend and you can trust him. I think so, I think so. I think me, him, and Wesker would all be best buddies. Luis, now you help.
I'll make it cheap for you.
There he is, the lad himself. The lad himself. Oh. Happy days. Happy fucking days. I think it's a good ending point there. I think it's a good place to stop. Whew, I do love the way they developed Luis and the more. Yeah, rather than the original, than the OG. Oh. God, that was a bit of a tense encounter at the end there. Turn that down. Thank you folks for coming on. Much appreciated. Thank you everybody for coming on and chatting. That was actually a really good crack tonight. The OG appeared but fucked off and it wasn't really about as much. Definitely. They gave him a lot more character. GG, good stream. Thank you very much for coming on. Thank you very much for chatting, folks. We are going to see now about raiding out to somebody because we're going to find one of the cool people. But that was good. Thank you everybody who came on. Thank you for all the chatting. Thanks for all the tips and advice as well. Thank you so much for the great stream as always. No baller. GG's. Thank you very much. So let's see, who have we got? Who have we got that's online at the moment of our buddies that we can raid out to? Moon, McKinn's, everybody. These are all absolute legends. Thank you again for coming on. So we'll be doing Monster Hunter on Wednesday night again. And we will be doing more Resident Evil 4 on Thursday. Now Saturday I'm not 100% sure on because I've my mate's birthday, so I don't know if it's an early thing or if it's a later thing. But I'll find out and we'll see. We'll see on that one. So who have we got? We have James Lee playing Final Fantasy X2 and we have Big Boss Robinson playing Battlefield 6. I can't wait for Monster Hunter. I'm enjoying it at the moment. I'm really getting into it. We also have Blaine playing Crimson Desert. That might be a good shout. So Blahing's Irish streamer who lives over in the United States at the moment. So very, very rarely do our streams actually cross over, but she's playing Crimson Desert at the moment, but also plays a lot of Resident Evil. So we're going to raid her, and if you could give her a wee hello, I'm going to throw in a wee raid message now in the chat. The top one is for subs, bottom one is for followers. But like I said, we'll be back on Wednesday for more Monster Hunter. Hook will be live tomorrow night with more Dark Souls 2. And I will see you fine folks then. I will chat to you later, and have a good night. Bye-bye.
Unfolds with every pixel, every turn, a story untold. Leoric, the dream awaits.